All right, so today we're going to be looking at TD Bank
Okay.
and specifically their recent earnings call transcript, which was just released on December 5th, 2024.
Sounds good.
We're going to try to figure out what is really going on with this bank.
Yeah, let's do it.
What are they saying? What are they thinking?
Behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes, yeah.
Whispers,
Yeah, exactly. Like, what are their big bets? What are they worried about?
fears, hopes, dreams.
So first up, the big news. Revenue's up 12% year over year.
Whoa.
That's huge. Like, are they just printing money over there?
That's really impressive, especially given the current economic climate.
Yeah, and it sounds like a lot of it's coming from their market-related businesses.
Right. So they've got a lot of different things going on. They're not just your typical, everyday banking.
Right, right.
So they've got some, investments, trading, things like that.
They're diversified,
Exactly. Yeah.
which is good.
Always a good sign.
And of course, their Canadian operations are still, going strong.
Yeah. Canada's been pretty resilient, so
Yeah,
that's not too surprising.
makes sense, makes sense.
But still, 12%, that's great to see.
Yeah. And they also just announced a dividend increase to $1.05 per share.
Oh, wow.
So they're definitely feeling good.
That's a great sign.
Like, hey, we're doing well. Let's share the wealth.
Share the wealth.
Right.
Exactly, yeah. It shows they're confident in their future earnings.
Yeah,
They think this is sustainable, which is good for investors.
exactly. Exactly.
And, yeah, it might attract some new investors, too.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So we've got this really positive revenue growth,
Uh-huh.
but it wouldn't be a real deep dive if we didn't dig a little deeper.
Right, you got to find the dirt.
Right. Gotta find the dirt. Exactly.
That's the catch.
Yeah. So their earnings per share, EPS, actually dropped 8%. And overall earnings are down 5% year over year.
Hmm.
So how do we square those two things?
So revenue's up, but profits are down.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Very interesting. What could be going on there?
Yeah, what's the deal?
What's the deal? Yeah.
So one thing that jumps out is their multi-year AML remediation effort.
Oh, AML, right?
That's anti-money laundering.
Anti-money laundering. Yeah, I've heard of this. A lot of banks are dealing with this right now.
Yeah, it's a big focus for regulators,
Big time.
and it can get really expensive.
So is that like lawyers and consultants and all that?
Yeah, they've got to bring in all these experts, make sure they're following the rules.
Makes sense.
It eats into their profits.
Yeah, and I'm guessing they've also been hit with some unexpected expenses, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like, they mentioned record catastrophic claims in their insurance business.
Oh.
Natural disasters, things like that.
Mother Nature
Exactly.
doesn't care about your earnings report.
Nope, not at all.
All right, so we've got AML and Mother Nature working against them.
Right.
But there's also something else, right?
Yeah, they also mentioned increased impaired PCLs, which are basically loans that might not get paid back.
Oh, okay.
So that's another hit to their profits.
So it's not just expenses, it's also potentially losing money on these loans.
Exactly.
And is this happening in any particular part of their business?
Well, their U.S. retail segment is really struggling. They saw a 13% drop in net income there.
So if you're banking with TD in the U.S.,
Yeah,
you might have noticed some changes or felt the impact of this somehow.
for sure.
And all of this combined has led TD to make a pretty big decision.
Okay, what's that?
They've put a pause on their medium-term financial targets.
So they're hitting the brakes on their goals.
Basically.
That's interesting.
It is interesting, right? What do you think that signals to investors?
Well, it says that they're taking a step back to really assess the situation.
Reassess.
Yeah, figure out their next move. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it definitely raises some questions about the future.
Right, right. All right, so we've got this kind of mixed bag of good news and bad news.
Yeah, it's a complicated picture.
It is a complicated picture, but that's why we're here, to try to make sense of it all.
Absolutely.
And speaking of making sense of things, let's move on to the Q&A portion of the earnings call transcript.
Okay, this is where it gets juicy.
This is where it gets juicy.
The analysts really grilled them.
Oh, they did not hold back.
No, they wanted answers.
I want to know what's going on.
Exactly.
So let's dive into some of those key questions and answers and see what we can learn.
That was good.
One of the first things the analysts jumped on was this $50 billion balance sheet optimization plan.
Oh, yeah, that sounds complicated.
It does. But basically, it means that TD is trying to sell off some of their assets to free up some cash, right?
So they're trying to slim down a bit.
Exactly, exactly. But it sounds like this plan is moving slower than expected.
I wonder why.
Yeah, why is that?
Well, it's not always easy to find buyers for certain assets, especially in the current market.
Right.
Like TD CFO Kelvin Tran mentioned that bonds that are really sensitive to interest rates have lost value recently. So
Oh,
they're
okay.
not going to sell those at a loss if they can help it.
So they're being strategic.
Strategic, exactly.
All right, and then there's this whole issue of professional fees, which have skyrocketed this quarter.
Oh, yeah, that was a big number.
Over $1 billion.
Yeah, a billion with a B.
Yeah, and it's hard not to think that a lot of that is tied to, this whole AML situation.
Right, all those lawyers and consultants are expensive.
Exactly. Exactly. And, they've got to get it right.
They can't mess around with this stuff.
No, the regulators are watching.
Big time.
So they're willing to spend the money to make sure they're in compliance.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And of course, the analysts also wanted to know, why now? Why this strategic review? Why hit the pause button at this particular moment?
Yeah, good question.
And Raymond Spring, the incoming CEO, he actually addressed this directly.
Okay, what did he say?
He basically said that this review, which only started last month, it's his opportunity to really get a clear picture of, what's working, what's not working.
So he's taking stock of the situation.
Before he makes any big decisions.
Right, right. And the big question on everyone's mind, of course, is divestitures.
Divestiture. That's a fancy word for selling stuff off, right?
Yeah, basically. Are they going to sell off parts of the business, especially in the U.S. where they're struggling?
The analysts definitely wanted to know.
They did. And, the answer was basically everything's on the table.
So no guarantees, but they're considering all their options.
Exactly, which probably means there's a lot of nervous people working at TD right now.
I can imagine.
Right. All right, before we move on, there's one more piece of this puzzle we need to address, and that's the AML monitorship.
Okay, right.
And its potential impact on dividends.
Yeah, that's a big one for investors.
Absolutely. Barrett Hooper, the chief risk officer, he explained that any dividends paid from the U.S. holding company, they need to be carefully considered by the board.
So they can't just send all the profits back to Canada.
It sounds like they need to make sure they have enough money set aside to cover any potential AML-related expenses, just in case.
Right, so it's a bit of a balancing act.
A balancing act.
Keeping the regulators happy and rewarding the investors.
Exactly.
It's a tough spot to be in.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here in this first part of our deep dive.
We have.
TD Bank, they're showing some real strength in some areas.
Yeah, that revenue growth is impressive.
It is. But they're also facing some serious challenges, with profitability, AML issues.
In this strategic review, who knows what that will bring.
Yeah, it could shake things up significantly. So stay tuned for part 2, where we're going to continue our analysis and really try to explore the potential implications of all of this.
Yeah, we'll dive deeper into some of those juicy details from the Q&A.
And we'll try to figure out what it all means for TD's future.
It's going to be good.
It is going to be good.
Buckle up.
Buckle up, that's right. Okay, so we're back, and we're still in the middle of this TD Bank earnings call.
Still digging.
Yep. Yeah, lots to uncover. One of the things I wanted to touch on was non-interest income.
Yeah, that's a big one for banks.
It is. And TD's actually been facing some pressure in this area lately.
Right, especially with the changes to overdraft fees.
Oh, right. Those overdraft fees.
Yeah, that's been a big topic in the industry.
It has. And, those changes might have even affected some of our listeners personally.
Yeah, if you bank with TD, you might have noticed.
Exactly. So what's the outlook here? Is non-interest income, is it all doom and gloom?
Well, it's not all bad news, actually.
Okay.
TD expects this income stream to stabilize, as they grow their credit card business.
Oh,
and
right.
their core checking account platform.
So they're kind of shifting their focus a little bit.
Yeah, it's like diversifying their portfolio.
Makes sense.
You don't want to rely too heavily on just one thing.
Right.
They're trying to spread it out a bit.
That makes sense. And while we're on the topic of, financial moves and things like that, they've also hit pause on another big one.
Oh, what's that?
Buybacks.
Buybacks, right?
Yeah, where they buy back their own shares.
Yeah, I know what those are.
But with the strategic review going on, they're holding off for now.
It's probably a smart move,
Yeah.
There's just so much uncertainty right now.
Right.
They need to preserve their capital, keep their options open.
Yeah, makes sense. It's interesting to see how all of these pieces are kind of interconnected, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Like the AML situation, the strategic review, dividends, buybacks.
It's all part of a bigger picture.
It is. And, one piece of that picture that we haven't really talked about yet is the employees.
Oh, right. The people actually doing the work.
Yeah, what about them? What's it like working at TD Bank right now with all of this going on?
Yeah, I bet morale isn't super high
Probably not.
with all this uncertainty, potential changes.
Exactly.
Are people worried about their jobs? What's
Right.
the atmosphere like?
Yeah. Well, Tim Wiggin, the head of TD Securities, he actually addressed this during the Q&A.
Oh, interesting. What did he say?
He basically said that, they're not just sitting around waiting for this strategic review to be completed.
So it's not like everything's on hold.
No, they're still moving forward, still pursuing growth opportunities.
So business as usual, kinda.
Yeah, I guess so.
That's good to hear.
It is. It is. It shows that they're trying to stay focused.
Right, they're not letting the challenges paralyze them.
Exactly.
They're adapting, being resilient,
Right.
which is important in this kind of environment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's kind of this balance, right?
Yeah.
Like they're thinking long term, but they're also, staying agile in the short term.
It's a tough balance to strike.
It is. It
Mhm.
is. Okay, so we've talked about dividends, buybacks, strategic review, employee morale. What's the key takeaway for our listeners?
Mm. The key takeaway, I think, is that TD Bank is at a turning point. They're facing some real headwinds.
Definitely.
But, they also have a solid foundation.
Yeah.
They're not going anywhere.
Right.
And they're taking steps to address the challenges.
Right, right. It's like they're at this fork in the road.
Yeah, a fork in the road.
And the decisions they make in the coming months, they're really going to determine, which path they take.
It's an exciting time to be watching them, that's for sure.
It is. It is. It's like a financial drama unfolding in real time.
Totally.
And, we only get these little glimpses into what's going on through these earnings calls.
Right, it's just a snapshot.
Snapshot.
But it's still valuable information.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But, it is important to remember that we can't predict the future.
No crystal ball.
No crystal ball.
But we can stay informed.
Exactly.
We can learn as much as we can.
And make the best decisions we can with the information we have.
Exactly. That's all we can do.
All right, so we're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to shift our focus to you, the listener.
Okay.
We're going to talk about how all of this might impact your investment decisions
Sounds good.
and what you should be watching for in the coming months.
Stay tuned.
Okay, so we're back, and this is the final part of our deep dive into TD Bank's earnings call.
All right. Time to wrap things up.
Wrap things up, yeah. And I really want to make sure we focus on, what does all of this mean for the average person out there?
Yeah, how does this actually affect our listeners?
Exactly, exactly. So let's start with something that's probably top of mind for a lot of people, the stock price.
Right. TD stock has been kind of all over the place lately.
It has, it has. And, with all this news, the strategic review and everything.
Yeah, it's definitely going to add some volatility.
So what's your take? Buy, sell, or just hold on for dear life?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is, it is.
Well, I think the strategic review is really the wild card here.
Okay.
If TD can really nail this, address their challenges, streamline things, make some smart decisions about selling stuff off.
Divest.
Divest, yeah, exactly.
We like that word.
They do. But seriously, if they can pull it off, it could really boost investor confidence.
And send that stock price up.
Potentially, yeah.
But there's also risk, right?
Oh, absolutely. Uncertainty always makes investors nervous.
Right.
So if this review drags on, or if TD makes some decisions that the market doesn't like, well, the stock could take a hit.
So it's a bit of a gamble.
It is. You got to weigh the potential rewards against the risks.
Right, right. And of course, we can't forget about those dividends.
Yeah, those are important, especially for income-focused investors.
Especially for those folks, yeah. And we know that the AML situation is making things a bit complicated.
Yeah, it's definitely adding another layer of uncertainty.
So for those folks who rely on those regular payouts, should they be worried?
I think it's valid to be concerned, but TD has a good track record with dividends.
They do.
They've said it's a priority, but they also have to be realistic. They need to make sure they have enough cash on hand to deal with any potential AML issues.
So it's a balancing act again.
It always is with banks.
It seems like it. So what's the bottom line for those dividend investors?
I think for now, it's a wait-and-see approach.
Okay.
The next few quarters are going to be crucial.
Right.
Pay attention to how the AML situation unfolds, how they're managing their capital.
Those are the key indicators.
Exactly. Those are the things to watch.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
This whole conversation makes me think about the bigger picture.
Yeah, zoom out a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. TD Bank, they're a big player, but they're not the only ones dealing with these kinds of issues, right?
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
This is an industry-wide thing.
Okay.
Regulatory scrutiny, economic uncertainty, pressure to innovate.
It's happening everywhere.
It is. It is.
So TD's story is really just like a microcosm of what's happening in the whole banking sector.
Exactly. A window into the bigger trends.
All right, so before we wrap up, let's try to distill all of this down into like three key takeaways.
Okay, 3 takeaways.
What are the things people should really be thinking about?
All right, first, TD Bank is at a crossroads.
Okay.
This strategic review is a big deal. It's going to shape their future.
Crossroads, big deal. Got it.
Second, they're facing some real challenges,
Definitely.
but they're also resilient. They've got a solid foundation.
They've been around a while.
Yeah, they have. They have. And third, this is not just a TD Bank story. This is an industry story.
It's bigger than just TD.
Exactly. So understand the broader context.
All right, three great takeaways. And as always, we encourage everyone to do their own research.
Absolute.
Don't just take our word for it.
Read the transcript yourself.
Read the transcript, yeah.
Follow the financial news.
Stay informed.
Exactly. And form your own opinions.
That's what makes investing so interesting.
It is. It's been an ongoing learning process.
It is. It is.
The more you learn, the better decisions you can make.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive.
It has. It has.
We've learned a lot about TD Bank, about the banking industry as a whole.
And hopefully our listeners have too.
Yeah, that's the goal.
That's what we're here for.
That's what we're here for. So keep asking questions, stay curious, and never stop learning.
That's the key.
It is the key. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.